So in this video, let's see how we can create the initial data without blocking the form. That is, I want to do it asynchronously. So coming back to our application. So on this empty form, I have just created one label, and if you see the properties, I put the text as status and the name as label processing. So we'll just show the status here, and if you see the code behind, I still have the same setup data here, but what I'm doing is I am actually doing the work in a background worker. So background worker is a ready component which is given in Windows Forms, and if you see here, I have the necessary namespaces for it here. So background worker is coming from component model.background worker. So I have that namespace here. So what is it I am doing here? This is the place where I do the work, and this is the place where I get the results back. So after my long running work is completed, I get the results back into this method, and finally I run the worker. So you might want to just refer a background worker for this, but in order to use it, if you know these three configurations, it is more than enough. So in my do work, I will be running the actual process of creating all the data, and if everything went well, I'll put the result as ready. So what happens is this result will be carried over to the onCompleted event, where I just show what happens. If there is an error, I show it, or if nothing happened and everything went well, I'll show the result as ready. Now, if you look at what's being done here, I'm just making sure that I do not insert anything if there is already some data, because when the application runs, every time we get here, and if the application is already there, we just bypass it. Even if you call the context.save changes during every run, there is no issue with it, because if there are no changes, it will just ignore it. It will not throw any exceptions. So, but here if you look at the, first I'll just show the prasadam types. So this is the advantage in entity framework. Unlike scripting in a database where I'll have to worry about all the IDs and associating the types, I just go ahead and create it like a collection of objects. If you see, nowhere I'm creating any IDs also. So this is the object initialization syntax I'm using. So I suggest you type it out once, so the syntax will be very clear. And I'm basically creating a list of prasadam types, and inside each of them I have a couple of prasadams. Sweet, I have 2 sweets, and then the next prasadam type I have 2 rice items. So this is a very, very unique and convenient way of reading the database, rather than writing a script wherein we'll have to deal with IDs and everything looks flat. So this is just ordered hierarchically, and I don't have to worry about associating the IDs. Entity framework will detect that while creating the prasadam types, it has to go and create 2 more prasadam entries and associate it with this type. So it will do all the association of foreign keys, everything by itself. And finally, we will go ahead and save the changes, and we'll be done with creating the initial data, if it does not exist, all the way by asynchronously, so that when the form runs, we really don't block the user. We keep showing the status. And if you see here, I do not have the database now. Whenever I make any changes to the database or entities, I just for now delete the database. I'll show you how we can do away with managing changes without deleting the database, because in production we will not be having the liberty to delete the database every now and then. That I'll take up in migration, but for now, let's see how this application runs. So what I've done here is I've put a breakpoint in the exception, so we will get a chance to dig into the exception if at all it happens. So let's run this application, and Yeah, the form loaded without waiting for the database to be created, and we see this setting up data, please wait. So this is a nice feature, and the form is still responsive. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to move the form. So now finally it says ready. And if I look at the SQL Server, now I'll just refresh again. We have the temple DB created here. And we'll also have all the related data here. For example, if I just look into this, you should see two types here, and the associated items within them should also be here. So this is extremely useful to seed the data when we do not have any data initially. So Entity Framework will not only go ahead and create the table structures for us, it will also go and seed the initial data for us.